Have you ever stopped to think about why Jesus set a man free from 6,000 demons, but allowed 2,000 pigs to throw themselves into the sea? A spirit that made someone live among tombs, shouting, hurting his own body, and then suddenly, an entire herd running toward the cliff. What does this scene reveal about the power of Jesus and the fate of demons? If you want to follow every detail of this story and other difficult passages, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Now pay attention to a detail that almost no one notices. After seeing a man set free, why does an entire town beg Jesus to leave? A lot of people read this story, get confused, and even use this passage to question God's character. But behind this tense moment, there are three truths that can flip upside down what you thought you understood. One about what God values, another about spiritual warfare, and another tied to your freedom today. If you want biblical teaching beyond the basics, subscribe and hit the like button, because I'm going to reveal three layers of this passage that can change the way you see spiritual deliverance. When you really see what's happening in this chapter, this story will never sound the same again. So grab your Bible and open it to Mark chapter 5. But before talking about the demons, go back one page. Everything starts with a decision. Jesus and the disciples had just crossed a storm so strong on the Sea of Galilee that experienced fishermen thought they were going to die. At the height of their fear, Jesus stood up, rebuked the wind, and said to the sea, "Silence, be still." Mark 4:39 records that the wind stopped and there was a great calm. But there's something essential here. That crossing wasn't just a simple boat trip. It was an intentional move. Jesus decided to cross the sea, face the storm, and head toward a place that would feel strange to any devout Jew. The land of the Gerasenes, Gentile territory considered unclean. Why would the Son of God leave the safety of the crowds to enter a hostile area? Because on the other side there was someone completely broken, a man no one else could reach, someone who lived among the tombs as if he were already dead. As soon as Jesus set foot on solid ground, he didn't find a warm welcome, but a scene that felt like it came out of a nightmare. Mark 5 says that as he stepped out of the boat, a possessed man came to meet him, coming from the tombs, carrying within himself an unclean spirit. He lived among the graves, far from the town, and no one was able to hold him down. Chains and shackles had been used many times, but he would break them violently, leaving behind only twisted metal and fear. With uncontrollable strength and a life marked by screams and wounds, this man had turned the whole region into a symbol of dread, becoming the very horror story of that people. And it was exactly there that Jesus chose to arrive. Mark describes this man as someone who had lost everything. Night and day he wandered among the caves and through the hills, shouting and hurting himself with stones, bleeding as he pulled himself away from any kind of life. He no longer had a home, a family, a seat at the table, or even a name that meant anything. He lived among tombs, but the graves weren't just a setting. They were a mirror of what he believed he was. To him, he was as finished as the dead around him, cursed, forgotten, trapped in a place of despair. This is the point where Jesus enters the story. He doesn't arrive at that shore by accident. He crosses a stormy sea with a specific destination, the region of the Gerasenes, also called the Decapolis, a group of cities marked by pagan culture, Roman influence, and pig farming. It was a place far from God, and that's exactly where the man no one could reach was living. When he sees Jesus from a distance, something unexpected happens. He runs, falls at his feet, and worships him, but at the same time he screams and begs to be left alone. This contrast reveals the clash between darkness and light, between the oppression that doesn't want to let go and a heart that, even wounded, recognizes who is standing before him. If you know the Torah, you know that pigs were forbidden to Israel. Leviticus 11:7 says, "The pig, because it has a split hoof but does not chew the cud, will be unclean for you." It wasn't just about food. It was a sign of covenant, a mark of separation. Even so, in the region of the Decapolis, there were pig farms, thousands of animals, jobs, money flowing, an economy built on something God had called unclean. When Jesus crosses the sea and arrives there, he doesn't just change shores. He crosses a theological boundary. He steps into a territory where God's law is set aside in the name of profit. And it's in this setting that a common question comes up. In Matthew 8:28, we read about two demon-possessed men. In Mark and Luke, the story focuses on one. So what's happening here? Is there a contradiction? No. There's emphasis. Matthew, writing to Jews, records both men, echoing the principle of Deuteronomy 19:15. Two witnesses confirming a fact. Mark and Luke, writing to Gentiles, focus on the man who becomes the voice, the one whose deliverance will be described in the verses that follow. Different gospel writers tell the same episode from their own perspectives because they're speaking to different audiences and highlighting different details. Even so, the scene is the same. The same Jesus, the same power at work. He steps into a region whose economy depends on what God had forbidden. The pigs support a system built on disobedience, and it's there that Jesus chooses to expose what no one sees. In Mark 5, we read his direct command, "Come out of this man, unclean spirit." He doesn't need to shout or repeat himself. One sentence is enough, even though the spirits try to resist. Then comes the question that changes the whole atmosphere. What is your name? Jesus isn't looking for information. He already knows. The question is for the witnesses, for us. The answer reveals the extent of that man's torment. "My name is Legion, for we are many." Legion is a Roman military term for thousands of soldiers trained to act in organized formation. Now put that image inside a single life. It wasn't just one demon. It was an army fighting for control of a broken soul. That's why he screamed night and day. No chain could hold him. It wasn't simple oppression, but full occupation. And even so, all that combined force knew it didn't stand a chance against the authority of Jesus. There were many spirits in that man, but none of them could compare to Jesus. The spokesman of the legion recognized who was standing before them, the Son of the Most High God. Not just a teacher or prophet, but the Son of the Most High God. Even the forces of darkness knew the truth about him. As James 2:19 reminds us, even the demons believe and tremble. After that confession comes the desperate request. Mark says they begged not to be sent out of that region. They didn't just want to leave the man, they wanted to stay in that territory. Then the scene shifts. Nearby there was a herd of pigs grazing, and the spirits begged to go into them. The power that had enslaved a man now shrinks like a prisoner standing before a judge. Why choose pigs? Because these spirits insist on inhabiting bodies, even those of unclean animals. The alternative seemed unbearable to them. Luke 8:31 explains that they begged not to be sent into the abyss, the place where fallen angels are imprisoned as they wait for final judgment. They knew Jesus had the authority to send them there early, and terrified, they clung to the only option they could see, to enter pigs and delay for just a little longer, the inevitable. This is where the story gets even more intense. In verse 13, Jesus simply allows the spirits to enter a herd of about 2,000 pigs. But why would he do that? At first glance it seems cruel, but there's a purpose. First, that man's deliverance needed to be seen. For years his torment was invisible. Everyone saw the scandal, the screams, the broken chains, but no one saw the spiritual prison. When the animals rush down the steep bank and drown, the magnitude of the evil becomes clear to the whole region. Second, it was also a judgment on a system built on disobedience. That profitable pig industry existed in direct defiance of God's law, and by allowing the loss, Jesus exposes that no business, no matter how lucrative, has priority over God's will. Third, he shows the value of a single life. One person is worth more than an entire herd, more than any financial stability. The news spreads, the town comes to see, and they find the man who had been dominated by a legion now sitting, clothed, and in his right mind beside Jesus. But instead of celebrating, overwhelmed by fear in the face of such power, they ask him to leave, because they're afraid of seeing even more things change. They prefer to cling to the little control they know than to make room for someone who turns everything upside down. They trade people for livestock, presence for safety, freedom for a predictable routine. And this reaction isn't just about them. It reflects what many of us still do when the gospel threatens to confront our favorite idols. Many people still react today just like they did back then. After being set free, the man begged to travel with Jesus, but he heard a no. In Mark 5:19, Jesus says, "Go home to your people and tell them everything the Lord has done for you and how he had mercy on you." It's the only time in the Gospels that someone asks to follow him and is sent back. It wasn't rejection, it was a calling. Jesus was leaving that Gentile region, but he wanted the testimony to stay there. So that man went through the cities of the Decapolis publicly telling what he had experienced. The people were amazed, not because of a flawless sermon, but because of the living evidence of grace. Once chained, now free. Once tormented, now at peace. He didn't have a diploma, he had a story. And from that story comes the first of 5 lessons. The spiritual world is real. Demons aren't symbolic figures, they're beings who oppose God. Ephesians 6:12 says that our struggle is against spiritual forces of evil. It's an invisible but real battle that affects thoughts, decisions, and environments. In that scene, the spirits don't argue with Jesus, they beg. Before the authority of the Son of God, there's no room for resistance, only forced obedience. When we understand this, we stop treating spiritual warfare as a theoretical curiosity and start seeing Jesus as the only Lord capable of confronting that darkness. Number 2, Jesus crosses storms to reach you. He crossed a sea for one tormented man. No applause, no invitation. Still, he went, because he leaves the 99 to look for the one sheep no one else is searching for. If he crossed the sea for that man, he can cross your chaos too. Number 3, freedom is messy. Jesus set a man free, and the town lost 2,000 pigs. Freedom can shake relationships, finances, and routines. When Jesus steps in, he knocks down what you've leaned on for years. Are you willing to let him take what's been holding you captive? Number 4, don't send Jesus away. The most tragic part isn't the man's torment, it's the town's reaction. They saw power and mercy, and even then they asked him to leave. They preferred pigs over people, profit over presence. Many still do the same, but the cost of holding on to your demons will always be higher than the cost of losing your pigs. Number 5, your testimony matters. That man didn't study theology. He didn't rehearse a speech. He didn't know how to answer everything. He just had a true story with Jesus. And that was enough for Jesus to say, "Go back home and tell what happened." Your story might seem small, but it may be exactly what someone needs to hear to find their way back. You might look at yourself and think, "I'm nothing special. I'm not the right person." But what qualifies you isn't your resume. It's what Jesus has already done in you. Talk about that. When people see who you were and who you're becoming, they'll realize it wasn't human strength but grace in action. Now let me ask you, is there any corner of your life where you've let darkness settle in? Any addiction, memory, or pattern of sin that you've accepted as part of your identity, as if saying, "This is just who I am, and that's it"? That man among the tombs thought he would be a slave forever. But there is no demon too strong, no pit too deep, no past too heavy for Jesus to reach. The same Jesus who silenced the legion is right there where you are. John 8:36 declares, "So if the Son sets you free, you will be truly free." You don't need to find perfect words, you just need to call His name. Romans 10:13 promises, "Everyone who calls on the name of the Lord will be saved." So right now, open your heart. Let Him break your chains. You were created to live in freedom. If you believe Jesus has all authority over darkness, write in the comments, "Jesus has all authority," and pray with me out loud. Jesus, I believe you are the Son of God. I give you my life. Set me free and use me for your glory. If you prayed that prayer, it's as if the doors of home have opened for you again. This is just the beginning of what He's going to do.